Why do some countries get rich while others don't? Open markets are the sole viable alternative for alleviating the extreme poverty of billions of individuals in developing nations, while simultaneously ensuring the prosperity of the industrialized world. The publication of Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations in 1776 is often cited as the beginning of economics by many individuals. In reality, the full title of this classic is an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nations, and Smith does indeed endeavour to elucidate why some nations accumulate wealth while others do not. However, the disparity between wealthy and impoverished nations has expanded even further in the 241 years since the publication of the book. Economists are currently in the process of refining their response to the original question. What is the reason for the wealth disparity between certain countries and others, and what can be done to address it? Rich and poor. The terms rich and poor are frequently employed in a relative context in everyday speech. For example, a poor individual has a lower income, wealth, products, or services than a rich individual. Economists frequently employ gross domestic product (GDP) per capita as a metric for the average economic well-being of a nation. GDP is the aggregate market value of all final products and services produced in an economy during a specific year, as measured in dollars. In a sense, a country's GDP is comparable to its annual income. Therefore, the average annual income generated by a specific country's economy per capita is estimated by dividing its GDP by its population. In other terms, GDP per capita is a metric that assesses the standard of living of a nation. In 2016, the United States had a GDP per capita of $57,467. Canada had a GDP per capita of $42,158. And South Korea had a GDP per capita of $27,539. China had a GDP per capita of $8,123. Ghana had a GDP per capita of $1,513, and Liberia had a GDP per capita of $455. GDP per capita is a measure of income that is equivalent to the distribution of GDP among the population, as it is merely GDP divided by the population. In reality, there can be substantial disparities in the fortunes of individuals within a given country. Therefore, even in a nation with a relatively low GDP, there will be individuals who are more fortunate than others. Additionally, there are impoverished individuals in exceedingly prosperous countries. It is estimated that 767 million individuals, or 10.7% of the global population, were living below the international poverty limit of $1.90 per person per day in 2013, the most recent year for which comprehensive data on global poverty is available. The key to escaping destitution, whether for individuals or nations, is the increase in income. In the case of nations that quantify their wealth in terms of GDP, poverty alleviation necessitates an increase in the quantity of output per capita that their economies generate. Economic development facilitates the emancipation of nations from poverty. How do economies grow? A nation's production of products and services experiences a consistent increase over time, which is referred to as economic growth. The total production of shoes is influenced by the inputs, which include primary materials such as leather, labour supplied by workers, and capital resources, which are the tools and equipment in the factory. However, the efficiency of the workers and the effectiveness of the equipment also play a role. Presently, consider two factories that employ identical quantities of personnel. In the initial factory, workers with fundamental skills operate push carts to transport products, assemble them with hand tools, and work on benches. In the second factory, workers who are highly trained utilize motorized forklifts to transport pallets of goods and power tools to assemble goods that are transported along a conveyor. Due to the second factory's increased TFP, it will generate a greater income, provide its employees with higher compensation, and generate a greater output. In the same vein, an increase in the total factor productivity, TFP, will lead to an increase in the rate of economic growth for a given country. An increase in economic growth results in the production of more products per person, which in turn generates higher incomes and allows a greater number of individuals to escape poverty at a faster pace. However, how can nations increase their total factor productivity, TFP, to alleviate poverty? Although there are numerous variables to evaluate, two are particularly noteworthy. Institutions. First and foremost, institutions are significant. Institutions are the rules of the game that establish the incentives for individuals and enterprises, according to an economist. The economic incentive to produce is influenced by the rules of the game. On the other hand, the incentive to produce will decrease if individuals are not financially compensated for their work or business, or if the advantages of their production are at risk of being lost or stolen. This is why numerous economists contend that the most effective incentives and opportunities for individuals to produce products and services are institutions such as the rule of law, free and open markets, and property rights refer to the boxed insert. Institutional significance is frequently illustrated by North and South Korea. In a sense, they are a natural experiment. North Korea is a dictatorial communist state in which the rule of law is suppressed and property rights and free and open markets are largely absent. Institutions in South Korea offer robust incentives for productivity and innovation. The outcomes? North Korea is one of the world's most impoverished nations, while South Korea is one of the wealthiest. Despite the apparent simplicity of the relationship, that the economy will expand and markets will flourish if the government guarantees robust property rights, free markets, and the rule of law, research indicates that the institution story alone does not offer a comprehensive understanding. This transformation did not occur under the conditions of strong property rights, free markets, and the rule of law. South Korea's transition to industrialization was a critical initial phase in its economic growth. Another illustration of an economy that has rapidly expanded is China. It has undergone a transformation from a backward agrarian nation to a manufacturing juggernaut within a single generation. Deng Xiaoping initiated a government-led initiative in 1978 to promote industrialization and the development of markets, both domestically and for the export of Chinese products. This marked the beginning of China's economic transformation. The markets required for the current significant increase in economic growth were developed as a result of these early government-supported changes. Commerce. Secondly, the economic growth narrative of the majority of countries is significantly influenced by international trade. Consider the scenario in which two children in the school cafeteria exchange a chocolate chip cookie for a muesli bar. They are amenable to trading because it provides them with mutual advantages. For the same purpose, nations engage in trade. Poorer nations can enhance their TFP by utilizing trade to acquire capital goods, including sophisticated technology and equipment, which leads to a higher rate of economic growth. Additionally, trade offers a more extensive market for a nation to sell its products and services. Nevertheless, numerous countries are impeded by trade barriers that limit their ability to engage in commerce. According to recent research, the income disparity between wealthy and impoverished nations could be reduced by 50% through the elimination of trade barriers. Conclusion: the gap between rich and poor countries can be bridged through the economic development of less developed economies. Inputs factors of production and TFP, the productivity of labour and capital resources, are frequently the underlying factors driving disparities in the economic growth rates of nations. This is because increased productivity fosters quicker economic growth, which in turn enables a nation to escape poverty. Institutions that offer incentives for innovation and production are among the factors that can enhance productivity and growth. In certain instances, the government can have a significant impact on the growth of a nation's economy. Lastly, the provision of markets for the products produced by less developed countries and the enhancement of productivity through access to capital resources can be achieved by increasing access to international trade. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment to share your thoughts.